Yo, what's up everybody? With the release of Path of Exile 2's big new 0.3 patch, the Abyssal League, we're seeing lots of new players. There was a free weekend on release, and lots of people are trying the game out for the first time. So I thought it'd be a good idea to do an updated, short, beginner's guide to help you get to terms with the basics of the game and get through the campaign as fast and easy as possible. One of the biggest things we see with new players is the game is too confusing, the game is too hard, and even when following a build guide, people are struggling on, big packs of mobs, bosses, whether that's not enough damage or getting one shot. So I wanted to go over things like that, how to get more damage easily in the campaign without doing any sort of trades, just easily getting much more damage on your character, no matter what build you're playing, and then how to sort your defenses so you can be a bit tankier, so you can take a few hits. Again, with the stuff you have available while leveling. On top of that, I'm going to go into some basics of crafting. The crafting system in this game is really, really complex. I'll just show you an example of this. If we go on here, for example, you can see all these things. These are all crafting items. And if you're new and you're trying to get into crafting, you'll take one look at that and just close it, right? I want to show you how to craft pretty much everything you're going to need throughout the campaign with just a handful of items. So yeah, that's what it's going to be about. Let's get straight into it. So first, let's talk about damage. If you can clear the entire screen with one ability, your campaign gets much easier. If you can defeat the bosses before they get onto their second phases, before they get onto their, harder mechanics, the bosses become much more easy. And the longer we're in a boss fight, the more chance there is for things to go wrong. So let's talk about getting as much damage as possible throughout the campaign. So if you go into your skills menu, which is the bottom left, and you click your skills panel, or you just press G, you can then see all the different skills. And what you have here is a rough example of what your DPS is. This isn't exact. There are better ways to monitor your damage, but this is a good guide of if your damage is getting better or worse. So you can see here, Ice Shot is one of my main abilities on this build, and this works for all builds. The average damage I'm doing is 11,500 DPS, damage per second. And we can open this up and we can look into more detail if we want. And you can see that everything is factored into this. Your attack speed, how much you crit, your crit chance, your accuracy, all this stuff factored into, on average, how much damage we're going to be dealing. So how do we get this number up? Now, the easiest way to increase our damage is to use support gems. Support gems will significantly increase our damage. So for example, we have here 25% increased attack speed. If we take this out, we go from 11,500 to 10,000. So we lose quite a lot of our damage per second, our ability to deal damage, when we take that support gem out. So the number one thing you can do is using the right support gems. Now, if you're following a build guide, cool, that's going to do that job for you. But one thing you should be trying to do as you go through the campaign is to increase increase the amount of slots you have. So to do that, we need these things here. We need these gems here, these Jeweler's Orbs. Now, you will find these throughout the campaign. You can also buy them once you get to Act 4. So how do they work? So if we look at the Jeweler's Orbs here, you can see you have lesser, you have greater, and then you have perfect. They're the three types. One gives you 3 slots, one gives you 4, one gives you 5 sockets. And they don't have to be used in order. If you have a perfect, you can just use it all the way and unlock all 5, right? So these are really, really good. And all we do is if I grab them, if we go to our gems here, what we can do is if you just open the lesser Jeweler's Orb, you right click it, and then you place it on the skill you want to give a new socket to. So you can see Barrage here has 2 sockets. I click this, now it has 3. Now you can put 3 support gems in and your abilities will get significantly stronger. Okay, next up is to increase the level of your gem. If you look at Ice Shot, I have it at level 21, and that is coming from the level of the gem itself, which is level 16, and then coming from other modifiers. So you want to increase this as high as possible, as it will give you as much damage as possible. So obviously the easiest way is to just always use a newer gem that you can find. So for example, mine is level 16. When I find a level 17 skill gem, I'll use that and upgrade it to a higher level. That's going to be the easiest way. Another way is to find it on gear. So if you look here on this quiver, I have +2 to levels of all projectile skills, which, because Ice Shot is a projectile skill, and if you hover over it, you can see its tags at the top here. It's a projectile skill, it's a cold skill, and it's a barrageable skill. So anything, that says +2 to all levels of projectile skills will carry over. So if you're playing a minion build, you can find, weapons and scepters and stuff that have plus levels to minions. Similarly, you can have plus melee, plus, all these things have an equipable version that will give you a damage boost. Okay, how else are we getting damage? The passive tree. The passive tree is a significant source of damage, so you want to make sure you're going in a good direction. If you're just going randomly, you're going to have a bad time. If you're following a build guide, you're completely fine. But if you're trying to do this yourself and you're just throwing points in randomly, you might be having a bit of a rough time here. So what I would suggest is, depending on your build, try and work out what you're going into. Are you trying to go into crit? Are you trying to go into attack speed? Are you trying to go into minions? And what you can do is go in the search and type in, minions. If you type in minions, you will see all of the nodes that are minion based. And then you can try and head to, if you were starting here, for example, as a witch, you could head up here. You could go and get the minion nodes, get this minion cluster, work your way up here, get the big minion cluster, and you could like path your way around like that. That's a good way to go about it. Similarly, if you're on a deadeye, like half the population, you could type in projectiles and head to all the different projectile nodes, things like that. So that's one way to go about it if you're not following a build guide and you're feeling a little bit lost. That's one way to find good sources of damage. The other good thing to do actually while on here is gems. Gems are jewels. Jewels are very, very, very overlooked while leveling, and they shouldn't be because they are huge. Having a good jewel is like having 4 more passive points almost. They're really, really important. And as you're going along, you'll find these jewel slots. They're all over. For example, if you're on a witch and you're coming up here, you'll eventually run into a jewel socket, right? So, and that's where you put the jewel, and you come along and there'll be some more, like there's one over here. So the jewel sockets are everywhere, and they are massive amounts of damage. For example, this one here has 4 things on it: increased crit chance, increased attack speed, increased hits against uniques, and increased damage. So these jewels are very, very, very powerful. If you find one, equip it. Now, the last way to really get your damage up, and arguably the biggest way, and this is probably if you're following all of this and you go, I'm doing all that and I'm still weak, I still struggle, it's your gear. The gearing is the biggest thing that's probably letting you down because it adds up so much damage. For example, I've got 11.5k. If I take off my quiver, I lose like 4,000, right? It's massive how much damage comes from your items. Gearing is very important, and I guarantee somebody watching this is like level 40 in Act 3, and you're still using gloves from Act 1. And that's why you're not having any damage. That's why things feel hard. Always keep on top of your gear while leveling. Now, the main ways that damage comes from our gear is our weapon, our offhand, our rings, and our gloves. And here's what we're looking for on all of those items. On your weapon, you obviously have the damage, right? The damage is, if I hold down Alt, we can look into this. You have increased physical damage. You have increased, you have chances to add damage, like add to cold damage. You could have added lightning damage. You could have things like that. You've got crit, things like that. All of that works into your damage. You also have rune sockets as well. So you have these sockets here, and you can see here 18% increased physical damage is a massive amount of damage added to that bow. On the quiver, again, you've got added fire damage, added cold damage, 50% increased damage with bow skills. Levels to projectiles, which we've already mentioned, is damage. Added attack speed gives us more attacks per second, which is more damage, right? So all of this is damage. And then on your rings, you can get the same. You can get added physical damage, added cold damage, added lightning damage, all that stuff. Chaos damage. You can get it on both your rings. You can get it on your gloves, added damage. So you can add 6 to 9 cold damage to attacks. You get attack speed. They're all the areas where you get damage. Whereas the helmet, the chest piece, the amulet, the belt, and the gloves are more defensive and, utility thing and resistances. Okay, so given how important gear is and how much damage we get from our gear, what do we do while leveling? How do we get that gear and how do we make it stronger? I want to do that now. I want to do a basic gearing and crafting guide. And I'm working on a very in-depth endgame crafting guide, but this is not that. This is not going to be complex. I want to keep it as simple and basic and to not confuse people as possible, right? So hopefully this is enough, but just know there is a lot more depth to it if you want to go looking for it. So first up, we've got the finding of the items, and then we've got the crafting onto the items. So where do we find our items? 1 is you just pick them up off the ground, right? You beat an enemy, you pick it up. 2 is the various vendors around the game. So if I go to a zone, if I go to, I'll go to Act 1, just to keep it really simple, we'll go to Clearfell. So every single zone has vendors. So if we look here, every zone will have different vendors. So if we go to Renly, for example, we can go buy and sell. He has a bunch of things here. We can go on the next tab. He's got a bunch of armor, and then he's got some other stuff on tab 3. And then everyone has a vendor. And then everyone will also have a random item. So this has like wands and scepters and stuff. What does Finn have? Nothing. So Finn's your random guy. So Finn, you can get random things. So we can buy a random spear, and we got a blue one with 3 modifiers on, right? So you can either buy the item, you can either find the item on the ground, you can buy it from one of the vendors, or you can buy a random item. And these are in every act. Okay, so before we get into crafting and talking about how to make an item stronger, let's talk about the items themselves. And I'm going to keep this as beginner friendly as possible. But if you have any questions, let me know down below. So First, let's talk about the item tiers, the item like the quality. So they start out normal, and when they are normal, they are basic. They are just the base item. Then we go up to magic, and as we get to magic, they have more modifiers on them. We call those affixes, and there's more complexity. There's like suffixes and prefixes of where they can be, but they're just called affixes. And as we go up to rare, the yellow item, which is probably what you'll be using the most, they will have a minimum of 4 of these affixes. Now, you can see here that there's four things there below the yellow line at the bottom. Now, they can keep getting more up to 6. So the max an item can have generally is 6. So you can have these 6 modifiers, and that will be the case of everything. So an item generally can have 6 modifiers on as a max. So you might have an item like this that can be crafted to be yellow with 6 modifiers on, right? So that's one way you can get the item to be better. Now, how do we get the best modifiers possible? It comes down to tiers, and I'm going to just keep this super simple again. The tier on an item is how good that is. So when you hold down Alt, and there's probably another button on the controller on console, as you hold down Alt, you can see the tier of the item, of the affix. So you can see here, this mana, it says here 151 maximum mana. That is a tier 1 roll. That is like the best it can be. And that's because the item is a higher level, right? If the item was a lower level, the maximum rolls you can get on a lower level item might be 30 mana, might be 40 mana, and that's like best case scenario. As the item level goes up, the maximum tier 1 rolls you can get better. So that's why when you look at like this bow with 190% increased physical damage, that's because it's a higher level bow. And I think 75 it starts to get like that towards the cap. So the higher level the item, the better these rolls can be. So that's one way to make sure you're getting good items, is to make sure you're using the highest level item that you can. So if you're level like 40, don't be using level 10 items from Act 1, right? So that's one thing you can do. So putting all that together, how do we craft an item? What are we working towards? Well, generally, what we can summarize from that is we want to get the highest level possible we can use. So, you know, if you are level 50, use a level 40 to 50 item. 1. 2, try and get the most affixes possible, which is 6. So try and be using items with 6 affixes on instead of blue items with 2 affixes on. And then 3, try and get affixes with good rolls. So for example, you can see these gloves I'm using, they have some good rolls. So like the evasion rating is a tier 1 roll, which is great. But the fire resistance is a tier 7 roll, which is very, very bad. So my fire resistance could be 40, could be very high, but it's terrible because these gloves are bad. So they're the 3 things you want to be looking at. So let's do it live and try and craft some really good gear. So let's grab a couple of items that are basic to start crafting on. And I'm going to use the endgame vendors. You can use the vendors of whatever act you are in. So we'll go to a couple, we'll see what they have to offer. So that guy has nothing. This person sells the random ones. This person has a couple of items here. So we'll go here. We have a bow with a little bit of lightning damage on, which isn't great. We have +3 to all projectile skills, which is really nice. So we'll grab that one. We'll grab. I want to just stick to doing like the same kind of items. What's this one got? This one has like magic items. So we'll go to the random vendor and we'll just grab a couple of bows here. So if we look into them, we have a little bit of cold damage, a little bit of attack speed, physical damage, that kind of thing. So what would we do with these items once we want to craft on them? We go into the materials, and I'm going to get out the basic materials we want. We want these. We want these. We want these. Everything down the left side is what you want to be looking at. And potentially this. That is all. This is all I would be using while crafting. There are so many items, but this is all I would focus on. I could probably clear up the inventory a little bit, but let's just focus like this for now. So what do we do? First things first, we have this blue item. Now, it doesn't matter what rolls are on it because this is just an example, but when we have a blue item, we can go up to 3 affixes. Then when we go to rare, it turns into 4. So the first thing you can do, an orb of augmentation to add another affix. So the blue now has 3 affixes. Now it has accuracy. Now it has 55% physical damage, right? So a little bit better. Next, we want to turn that from blue to yellow. So we would use the Regal Orb, and this turns a magic into a rare and adds one modifier. So we'll take this, we use it on the same item, this one here, and now it has extra life. I think that was added. So now it has life. Now, this is where I would stop. This is where I would stop on your item if you don't like what you've rolled. If you don't like these things, you know, a bit of accuracy, physical damage, if this isn't looking better than what you currently have, you would stop here and you would say, no good, get rid of it, sell it back to the vendor, and try another item. Okay, so I've got a couple of other items to yellow to show you what you do next. So I found a couple of others that have some okay stats. You know, this one has levels to projectiles. This one has attack speed and cold damage. So once you have ones where, you know, they're yellow and you want to get to 6 affixes, that's when you start using Exalted Orbs. Augments a rare item with a new random modifier. So we would use this, and we just got some accuracy, which is a very low roll, which is bad. But you could use another one, some fire damage, and another one. The item's not good, but you can see that's how you get to 6 affixes. So if you have an item that's pretty good, you can use this to get to 6 affixes and potentially find better things. That's the basic way to upgrade your gear. You would first upgrade a normal item to a magic, then you would upgrade a magic with new modifiers, then you would turn the magic rare, and then you could add upgrade a rare item with a new random modifier, would get you from 4 affixes to 6. That's kind of the process. Another thing you can do is if, say, you had a standard normal and you wanted to skip all those steps, you can use an Orb of Alchemy, and this will take it from a normal right up to a rare with 4 modifiers. So you can do that, and we got, you know, we jumped all the way to the end and skipped using all of these, which is one thing you can do to craft, and you just kind of really rolling it there. You've got no idea what's going to come out of it, but that's another thing you can do. And that's the basics of crafting while leveling. Okay, now all of that is very random. There's not really any, you're just kind of hoping for the best. One thing you can use is essences. Now, essences are rarer during the campaign. You're not going to have loads of them, but if you do find them, use them. The way essences work is as you get further in the game, the essences get better. So don't worry about using the lower level ones. This was what like the essences look like. You can see you have like lesser essences, you have normal essences, you have greater, and then you have perfect essences. So they get better and better, but don't feel bad about using these lower level ones on low level items. So when you have a magic item, a blue, and you put the affixes on it, so we max the affixes, and we are ready to go to rare, rather than just using a regal and getting a random modifier when we go to rare, we can use a essence to choose what our next affix will be. So for example, say we want to add lightning, we would use a essence of literacy. You want to get, we look down, say you want to get fire, you would use the essence of flames, right? So say we want to add lightning, we would just right click this, and now it has 3 to 57 lightning damage, which, you know, is fantastic. So that's one thing I would definitely recommend if you have a good way you want to take your build. Say you're a warrior and you want to get fire, throw fire on. You're playing a lightning ranger, or a lightning sorcerer, you can throw lightning on, things like that. There's also like other things you can add, like physical stuff, and you can add, if we go down, you can add cold damage, you can add lightning damage down there. We've got stuff for maces and scepters for presence. You've got things like this for physical damage, so just adding physical damage to weapons is always a good thing. So yeah, this is going to be really useful if you find it during the campaign, but if you don't find any, just use your regals and hope for the best. And then once you have the item you want, once you've crafted a really good item that you want, what you can do is you can then put some finishing like steps to it. So say this was like the perfect weapon. Say this was the one you was going to use for the whole of Act 2 because you really like it. What can you do to it? First, you would increase the quality. So you have these things here, the Arcanist Etcher, the Armorer Scraps, and the Blacksmith's Whetstone. The Blacksmith's Whetstone is for your weapon, the Armorer Scrap is for armor, and the Arcanist Etcher is for wands, staffs, or scepters, and they increase the quality. So on a weapon, you would grab some of these blacksmith stones and you would upgrade it. You see the damage there is 47 to 88. You see that here? As we upgrade the quality, that damage has gone up. Now it's 88, now it's 90, and the quality is at 2%. And that can go up to 20%. So that's a massive, massive damage boost. The way we get these things is we would find items that have quality on them, go to the salvage bench, and destroy them. And that will give us these items. So that's one thing, add quality. The second thing you would do is add sockets. So these things here, Artificer's Orbs, you just right click and you add a socket. And you can get 2 on a weapon and 2 on a chest piece and 1 on other pieces. And then with the sockets, you can add runes. So these are your runes, you know, added fire damage, added physical damage. So say you just want to add some fire damage to a weapon, you would just do that. And you can see now it has 4 to 6 fire damage. That's it. That's pretty much all there is to it. If you're looking for these These Artificer's Orbs, it's the same sort of process. You just go to a salvage bench and you salvage an item with a socket, just like that. And that is how you would get a chance to get these back. So you can see we got Artificer's Shards, 10 of those, and we get an Artificer's Orb. So that's it. That's pretty much the basics of crafting. Sorry if it was a little long. Sorry if it was confusing. But if you have any questions, let me know and I'll try my best to answer them. Okay, now let's talk about defenses. And if you've stuck with me for this long, I don't know how, welcome, thank you. But let's get into defenses. So defenses have a trio. There is 3 parts to defense, and it's going to depend highly on your class and your build. You have armor, evasion, and block. Now, depending on what you're playing, if you're playing like a dexterous character, you're going to be in this bottom right section, and we're going to be looking at evasion. And you see all of the nodes around here are evasion. If we go up here, you'll see very little evasion. If we go into armor, you'll see lots of armor nodes on the left side where the warriors play, but very little up here and very little up with the mages. Energy shield is the third one, loads of it up near the witches and the sorceresses, but very little down here for the warriors and not as much for ranged. So that's the 3 things. Now, I'm not going to go into any detail to the mechanics of how they work. All I'm going to say is, and like, when you get to endgame, you'll need to get into the detail and you'll need to learn how to get the perfect amount. But all you need to know while leveling is get the number up. If you're playing a ranger, get your evasion up. Evasion is your chance to dodge. It's your chance to dodge an attack. So something hits you, does that go to and take your life down, or does it just go through? Does it just like, do you evade it, right? It's like a rogue. Do you like dodge the attack? Then you have armor. Armor is your chance to reduce the amount you take. So you can see here, armor reduces the physical damage you take. So you're taking an attack that will be reduced if by the amount of armor you have. So if you're really tanky, you won't take as much as, let's say I took an attack as a ranger. If it got through my evasion, I would take the full hit. If you have a good amount of armor, you would take a reduced amount. And then finally, it isn't block, it's energy shield. Energy shield is the third part of this, defense setup. And energy shield is the thing that sits above your life bar. If I just take away my camera for a second, you'll see down here, we have our life of 1,000. I'll take this screen off. We have the life of 1,400, and then we have an energy shield of 700. So the enemies first have to get through the energy shield, and then they can get to the life. And as you take a hit, the energy shield will then start to refill back up. So they're like your 3 main sources of defense. And then obviously, if you look into here, you have block as well. And this is just your chance to like fully block the attack. And another thing to know is that certain things can get through certain things. So, the armor might be really good at blocking a certain type of thing, and then evasion might be good at dodging another certain type of thing. And as you get into endgame, you will notice players start to take like a more hybrid. I'm currently playing with lots of evasion and a little bit of energy shield, so that they first go through the energy shield, and then I have a chance to evade. And then while you're evading, the energy shield will be working its way back up. So some people do pad out with different things, but generally pulling it back down to simplicity, get that number up. And the way you do that is gear. And you can see here, we have like this chest piece, 1,000 evasion, 400 energy shield. If you're running around with a chest piece and it has 50 evasion and you're in Act 3, bad. That's why you're getting one shot, because you haven't put your defensive stats up. So all I would suggest for that is it's not as complex as attack, which is why I've left it till the end. It's just get better gear. It's just get better gear, and the gear, the higher level the gear, similar to the weapons, the higher level your gear, the better this can roll. So if this was a chest piece from Act 2, you might only have like 300 evasion. But because it's an end game chess piece, pretty much it's like 65, it can have over 1,000 evasion. And just like the other pieces, they are all the same. So, these gloves have 280 evasion. If they were lower leveled, they might only have like 30 evasion. So try and get as many stats as you can on your gear while leveling to push these numbers up as much as possible. Get loads of armor, loads of evasion, or if you're playing like a witch or a sorceress, loads and loads of energy shield. And then finally, resistances. Resistances are something that I am 100% certain the majority of new players overlook because you don't understand the importance of resistances. So when we look at this page again, you see the defenses, and then we come down and we have this section here. These are your resistances, and you can see fire, lightning, cold, and chaos. This reduces the amount of damage you take. So let's say you you are getting hit with a fireball. An enemy in the abyss throws a fireball at you, and that fireball does 100 damage. That might one-shot you. If you had 50% fire resistance, that would only do 50 damage. Then you might not get one shot. Now imagine you had 75% resistance, then you would only take 25 damage. So that's the importance of resistances. Now, that comes in even better when you look at the defenses, because you have the chance to evade. So maybe you evaded it, and then it hasn't hit you. And then if it does hit you, it does a reduced amount of damage. So when you combine this together, like if it does hit you, it then will hit your energy shield. And it hits your energy shield at a reduced amount because of your resistances. So when you combine these two, you are so much tankier. And if you're not getting the resistances, you're going to have a really bad time. I'm just changing all my gear over. So believe it or not, these are very, very low right now. They look, pretty good if you're a new player, 40, but they're terrible. These should be at like as high as you can possibly get. The cap is 75, so you want to get them as close to 75 as possible. Now, the reason that as you go through the campaign, this is going to feel worse is because these go down. So I'm not sure on the exact number, but as you go through the campaign, every act, your resistances will go down. So your base starts at 0. So you start with a 0 resistance. And then as you get into Act 2, I think it goes down like 10%. And then you get to Act 3, you lose another 10%. So at end game, for example, if I take off all of my gear that has resistances, just to show you, if I take off any gear with resistances, just like this, you can see we actually sit at a negative 50% lightning right there. We're at a negative 50%. So if I just had all my gear with no resistances on, I would be at a negative 50%. And if I thought, I've got good armor, I've got good evasion, you're still at negative 50% energy, lightning resistance. So if you got hit with a lightning spell, it would do 50% more damage because it's a negative. So rather than reduce the damage, it would do extra. And this is a big trap for new players. Say you get into Act 2, all your resistances drop, you might have like 10% on a ring and 5% on something. They drop, you might be in the negatives. So this is one thing to really be careful on. And like we've already spoke about, the items that can have like damaging things on, but there are, the other side has resistances. So the chest piece, the boots, the belt, the gloves, your rings, your amulet, these can all, I think your helmet as well. Yeah, these can all have resistances on. So try and find resistances and patch the holes of, your missing resistances to try and bring them up. I'd say like in the campaign, you at least want to be like plus 25. I'd say minimum. You want to be like plus 25. Otherwise, you're going to get to bosses like the Act 2 boss who has lightning. If you're in like negative lightning resistance or you're at like 1% lightning resistance, it's going to be really, really hard. So yeah, that's pretty much everything there is to say on defenses. Like this could be hours long in detail, but I wanted to keep it short. It's definitely not been short. So I'm going to wrap it up here. Hopefully this helps. How to deal more damage, how to craft basic items throughout the campaign, and how to not get one shot by everything in Path of Exile 2. If you found this useful, do consider subscribing. Build videos, guides, all that stuff is always coming on this channel. Any questions, let me know down below. Thank you for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you in the next one.